Hi everyone, it's Mike from Replica Airguns, and I've been trying to get to this review for some time. I've just had a lot of things piling up here. I've still got a lot of reviews to do, so I want to get right to this one. This is the Browning high-powered Mark III CO2 BB pistol, and I'm going to combine the tabletop and the shooting review just because I've got so many reviews stacking up. I'm trying to shorten them up and do the tabletop and shooting portion all at once. So with this review, I'm going to try and get through it a little quicker than normal. So let's get right to it. Now there's a couple times where I may have referred to this gun as the Mark II, but it is actually the Mark III. And to sort of address that, the Mark I was obviously the first version, and Browning made some slight changes along the way, hence the Mark II and the Mark III versions. Essentially they changed the safety and the grips and a few other things on these guns along the way. Alright, so this is a non-blowback, mostly plastic construction gun with some metal in it. Uses 12 gram CO2 cartridges. It shoots 4.5 millimeter steel BBs. It shoots 18 shots in its full-size dropout magazine. Now it's not all metal, it's a plastic and metal constructed magazine. It has a smooth bore barrel. It also shoots in single and double action and has a claimed feet per second of 410. And as I said, this is a replica of the Browning high power Mark III. I have no real guns to compare this to, because this gun is kind of an exclusive gun. There are really no other Browning high power replicas that I know of. The closest gun that would compare would be the Echo ES66, which does look a little bit like a Browning high power. I don't have that gun. I do have the ES55, so you can check that review out. The ES55 is very similar to the 66, has the lower receiver that is the same, but the upper portion is different between the ES66 and the 55. Alright, this gun is also made in Taiwan. And as per usual in the lower priced guns, it does come in the clear packaging. Alright, with usually you'll find all your specifications there. And of course it came with, inside the packaging, it came with, kind of hard to show you this, but it came with this little sort of abbreviated manual instruction guide. Alright, so let's do a quick walk around of this gun, go over some of the parts and components. We're going to look at the left side of this gun first. Show you around a little bit. Okay, you'll see here we have our Browning markings on the slide portion. Now this is the slide catch release, but it's molded into the gun. We do have a working ambidextrous safety. See that there. Now the trigger is metal, and by the way, it's single or double, and single action. And both the trigger and hammer are metal, which is nice. Okay, there's no real other engravings or parts that I can really show you on the left side. Let's look at the right side of the gun. Take a quick look. Now you'll have your serial number here. Again, you have some Browning markings there. And on the front, your warning labels here. I like the two-tone ejection port, although it's not really metal or anything. But it is plastic and it's not a sticker, which is nice. You have your ejector here, and again your ambidextrous safety. I forgot to mention there is a magazine release here, and that I believe is plastic, but we'll go over that later. Alright, let's look at the top. So you have your front sight. There's no dots on here, but I believe the original one would have the dots. Back sight again, your hammer, metal hammer. Okay, would be nice if it had the dots, but I didn't find it too hard to use to shoot with. Alright, on the bottom there is no sight rail here, or rail for accessories. So you can't put anything on there, but that's true to the real Browning, and you wouldn't want to mess with that. Now we'll get into the magazine. Now I do like the spring-loaded tab, similar to the Colt Special Combat. It is plastic, but it seems to work just fine. I'm going to release this magazine, pull it out so you can see it. Okay, now it's nice. What I found though is hold on to this. When you're putting the CO2 in, turn this part of it and hold this, because this is easier to hold. If you're trying to tighten the CO2 and you go to switch over and then it flops down and you're trying to grab it, I lost a whole CO2 loading this gun, so that's my recommendation. Hold on to this, turn this part. It's easier to grab. Okay, so that's a quick little tip for loading this style of magazine. Now the nice thing about this is that it has metal on the top, so it gives it a bit of weight. It is plastic on the bottom. and it's really easy to load. This is an excellent design for loading. You can pull this down, lock it over to the side, and you load it in that little chamber there, that hole there. Focus, there we go. And 18 rounds go in here. Flick the switch and it's loaded up. This moves back and forth, and what that does is once it pushes a BB into the chamber and kind of seals the whole mechanism off from the BB magazine, which probably is more efficient at the end of the day. But when you're loading BBs, you can feel them load. You can feel this pushing them in. Even in single action, you can feel that happening. So maybe a little bit of oil in here, or just a touch in that metal area, might be a good thing. Alright. Alright, quickly going over the front of the gun. It does have a slightly recessed barrel, which does give it the more sort of true wide open barrel opening, and then inside you can see the slightly smaller diameter barrel in there. And this little bolt here, the nice thing about it is it's a bolt, it's not just a plastic piece, and this is probably part of the disassembly of this gun. You'll notice there's no screw holes on the side of this gun like many other plastic BB guns, because in a lot of cases they actually take two sides, slap them together and screw them together. This gun looks to be assembled differently, so very interesting. I like the design, it's a lot more realistic. Alright, so at this point we're going to go outside and we're going to shoot this gun. And again, remember, I might refer to this gun as a Mark II, but it is a Mark III. We're going to shoot this gun through the chronograph, see if it meets up to the 410 FPS claim. And then we're going to shoot 8 rounds at a target from a semi-rested position and see how tight of a group we can get. Then I'll come in and we'll talk about it a little bit. Alright, so we're here with my Umarex Browning High Power Mark II. And we're going to shoot 8 rounds through the chronograph. This gun has a claim feet per second of around 410 FPS. So we'll see how close we can get to there. It's not exactly a warm day, but it's not cold. I'd say it's about 12 or 13 degrees outside here. It was raining earlier today, but it's nice now. So let's get on with the shooting portion of this test. I will be shooting in single action. Safety off. Here we go. Alright, we're getting close to 400. 3. That was an error. I'm going to just reset the chronograph here. So this is going to be shot 3 here. This will be shot 4. That was low. That sounded kind of funny too. So shot 5. That's better. Shot 6. Shot 7. And shot 8. We're going to do one more too, but here we go. Shot 8. And this will be for that one that kind of misfired. Now the reason why I think it misfired is because the way my clamp is on this gun, it's clamping down on the plastic on the gun, and the trigger was actually sticky, which means it was interfering a little bit with the mechanics of the gun. So I loosened the clamp off a bit, and it seemed to shoot better after that. Okay, so we got up into the high 350s, close to 400, but not 410 like claimed. Maybe on a hot summer day it'll do a little bit better. Now we're going to head to the accuracy portion of this test, and again I'm going to shoot 8 rounds on the target from a semi-rested position. So the gun will be rested in the front, but I'll be kind of hovering in the back, and we'll see how well we do. Alright, so we're all set up for the target portion, accuracy portion of this test. Got my Browning High Power Mark II here. We're going to head back from 20 feet out. We're going to take 8 shots on this target, semi-rested position. So the gun will be rested in the front. I'll be sort of floating in the back, kind of kneeling. Alright, let's head back, take 8 shots. By the way, this is going to be in single action. Okay, here we go. One more. Well, Guess we're only going to get 7 shots today because I have an empty magazine. Not bad. Look at that group. That is about a 1-inch group. Pretty nice and very well centered. Just a little bit high. Now I was aiming just at the bottom of the target. So from 20 feet out, maybe a little further out, it might drop just a hair. Very nice accuracy. Now again, that was with 7 shots because I only had 7 rounds in the magazine. I think I only put 17 rounds in this magazine. Now it's got a claimed 18 rounds. I loaded it all the way up. I shot 8 rounds with the chronograph, actually 9 because we had a misfire, and then I just shot 7. We might not have an 18 round magazine here. I'll count the next magazine for the tabletop portion so I can let you know how many actual BBs fit in the magazine. But anyways, let's head inside and finish up this review. Alright, we did pretty good shooting it outside. We got really good accuracy with my 8-shot test. We got decent FPS. I want to mention I got roughly 7 18-round magazines, so well over 100 shots before I felt that, it was getting a little bit lower on power. So this gun gets lots of shots, pretty decent feet per second, not right up to 410, but maybe on a hot day it'll get a little closer. The trigger was a little creepy in single action. That's where I noticed it the most in single action because the hammer was already back and I could feel the BBs loading a little bit, but that might work itself in. This is a brand new gun. Now this target represents another 2 18-round magazines fired in double action in a standing, unrested position. And the grouping here is about 2 inches right in here, and then there were 2 right here. And I think these 2 happened when I shot 2 BBs at the same time. What happened is I started pulling the trigger back, and then I kind of stopped, and then I pulled it again. And I think 2 BBs loaded into the chamber because I could hear a different sound happen. And they seemed to sound like they were going a little slower. The delay between shooting and the target getting hit was slower, and that would indicate why these 2 here are lower, because they're going slower, they're going to drop faster. So most of those shots hit right in here, and that's pretty darn good in freestanding from 20 feet out with any gun. Alright, so let's talk a little bit about some of the pros and the cons. Now I like the fact that this gun doesn't have any of those telltale screw holes that so many BB guns have. Kind of gives the gun a little bit of a cheesy look. There's none of that going on with this gun. Now the gun feels really good, even though it is a bit lightweight. It feels well built. A lot of guns these days are made out of plastic. I like that the trigger and the hammer are metal, and of course there's lots of metal parts inside, I'm sure. Now this gun did really well in the accuracy portion of the test, and it had okay power at the end of the day. I also like the full-size dropout magazine. That's a nice touch, and it's really easy to load. It works very well. Overall, I'd say this is a good-looking gun. And the fact that it's really one of the only Browning replicas is definitely a plus for this gun. If you are a Browning high power owner, you're going to probably want to pick one of these up. Some of the cons, it's mostly plastic, which makes the gun feel kind of lightweight. And personally, I would have really liked to have seen more metal parts on this gun. Now the Umarex Browning High Power Mark III also doesn't have a moving or working slide. I'm not talking about blowback, but it's always nice when the slide functions like a real gun. For instance, like the Umarex Makarov. Now the Browning High Power, in my opinion, could have sacrificed a few less shots for a little bit more power to get it up into that true 400 plus feet per second. That would have been nice also. And I would have liked to have also seen some white dots on the sights, because I'm pretty sure the real Browning Mark III would have white dots on the sights. I'm pretty sure of that. Alright, so that wraps up this tabletop and shooting review for the Umarex Browning High Power Mark III CO2 BB pistol. Overall, I found the gun to be pretty good, so make sure to check it out. I don't have it currently in the Canadian Replica airgun store, but I am selling it in the US Replica airgun store, so if you're a US customer, check that out. And hopefully I can bring it into the Canadian store shortly. I also have a written review for this gun, so you can check out the written review if you like. Of course, you'll find that at ReplicaAirguns.com. I generally put a lot of the links in the description to these videos, so you can usually click right on those links and get to the website. Also get to the web store to buy these items. That's pretty true with most of my reviews. I'm also on Facebook and Twitter, so check out my Twitter and Facebook channels. Username is Replica Airguns. And that pretty much concludes this review. I've got a whole bunch more to do, so I better get at it. Thanks for watching, and take care.